Okay, I want you to close your eyes for a second. Just picture this. It's February 2026. You're standing right in the center of Berlin. The wind is biting. Snow is coming down in sheets. But the air is just electric. It's buzzing. There's this huge demonstration brewing for February 7th, so just 48 hours away. Yeah. But the energy, it's not just about the protests. It's about a headline that just dropped, a headline people have been waiting nearly half a century to read.
It's one of those rare moments in geopolitics where the tectonic plates actually shift. You know, it's not just noise, it's an earthquake.
We are talking, of course, about the European Union officially listing the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, as a terrorist organization.
Finally.
And to really wrap our heads around the sheer magnitude of this, we're doing a deep dive into a scorcher of an interview from Radio Irava. It features Mr. Mohades, who is a seasoned political analyst and activist, and it was recorded just days before this massive Berlin rally.
And what I love about this particular source is the immediacy. I mean, Mohades isn't writing a history book from 10 years in the future. He is right there in the eye of the storm, unpacking the strategy, the internal friction, and frankly, the sheer desperation of the regime.
So our mission today is to go beyond the headline. We need to figure out, why did Europe wait decades to do this? What does this actually do to the regime's bank account and its political survival?
And then the big one.
And this is where it gets really heated, we have to unpack the fierce internal debate happening within the opposition about who actually leads the charge. It's a clash of visions between the organized resistance and the supporters of Reza Pahlavi.
It is a messy, complicated web, but I think once you start pulling the threads, the picture of what's happening in Iran right now becomes crystal clear.
Okay, so let's start with that why now question. Because, let's be honest, the IRGC hasn't exactly been a Boy Scout troop for the last 40 years.
Not even close.
But Mr. Mohades doesn't exactly frame this as some triumph of European morality, does he?
Not at all, no. If anything, he frames it as a failure of punctuality. His take is that the EU is about 20, maybe 30 years late to this party. He describes this decision not as a proactive leadership move by Brussels, but as a reaction, one forced by undeniable, gritty reality.
He actually lists 3 specific catalysts that finally broke the camel's back. So it wasn't just a sudden change of heart.
No, it was pressure. Pure pressure. First, you have the domestic situation in Iran, the IRGC's role in suppressing the recent uprisings, specifically the violence we've seen in just the past month. It was too visible. You can't ignore videos of that kind of brutality when they are flooding your social media feeds.
Right.
Second, there's the regional instability. I mean, the IRGC has its fingerprints on chaos all over the Middle East.
But the third one.
Yeah.
The third one is the real kicker for Europe, isn't it?
Oh, that's the game changer. Ukraine. Mohades points out that the supply and training for the drones used by Russia in the war, well, that brought the IRGC's threat directly to Europe's doorstep. It's one thing when the terrorism is happening in the Middle East. It's another when those drones are hitting infrastructure in a European candidate country.
It's that classic geopolitical selfishness, in a way.
Yeah.
Became their problem.
Exactly.
But what's fascinating is that the Iranian resistance has been shouting this from the rooftops since before some of our listeners were even born.
Mohades drops a number that really puts this into perspective. He mentions that the opposition leader, Maryam Ravi, publicly called for this specific terrorist listing exactly 117 times.
Wow.
117 times. Just imagine the frustration of shouting the same warning for years, being ignored, and then finally watching the world catch up.
There's this incredible historical flashback in the interview, too. He talks about a prediction from 1980, that's year 59 in the Persian calendar.
This part gave me chills. He references Musa Kibani, who's a key figure in the resistance history. Back in 1980, Kibani predicted that the regime's club-wielding tactics, sending thugs to beat protesters,
right,
that it wasn't just a phase. He predicted it would inevitably evolve into full-blown international terrorism. And Mohades argues that this prediction came true to the letter. You look at the assassinations in Italy, the operations in Latin America.
It's the ultimate I told you so, but with just a horrific price tag.
Yeah.
There's that anecdote he shares about the former Belgian prime minister. It sounds like a pretty tense conversation.
It was a very mask-off moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. The former Belgian PM apparently asked the current European leaders just point blank, "Aren't you ashamed?" He was calling them out, asking how they could justify blocking this listing for so long, given the mountain of evidence. It highlights that the resistance to this move It wasn't because of a lack of proof.
It was political inertia.
It was inertia. It was appeasement. He specifically calls out the era of Federica Mogherini.
So the inertia is finally broken. The EU has made the move. But let's get into the mechanics of this. Why does this listing matter? It's just a label, right? Or is it more?
It's so much more.
Mohades uses a metaphor that I think just nails it. He calls the IRGC the backbone of the regime.
And that is the key to understanding the collapse. The IRGC isn't just the army. In most countries, the military stays in the barracks. In Iran, the IRGC is the backbone because it controls internal security, it manages the wars abroad, and crucially, it owns the economy.
Right, let's dig into that economy part. Because I think people imagine sanctions just mean, we won't buy your oil. But Mohades calls the Iranian economy an empire that's built on the IRGC.
Think of it like a massive conglomerate. I mean, imagine if a single military unit owned the construction companies, the telecommunications, the ports, and the banks. If you list that military unit as a terrorist organization, you aren't just sanctioning a few generals.
You're sanctioning the entire country's infrastructure.
You are effectively freezing the assets of the entire national economy. You are making it illegal for anyone, anywhere, to do business with the companies that run the country.
And then there's the diplomatic fallout. The source mentions a diplomatic purge. How deep does this actually go?
It's staggering. Mohades claims that approximately 40% of the regime's diplomats abroad are direct or indirect members of the IRGC.
Wait, 40%? So almost half of the people in their embassies.
According to his analysis, yes. So overnight, you have a situation where nearly half of your diplomatic corps are now members of a designated terrorist organization. You can't have a terrorist holding diplomatic immunity in Berlin or Paris. They have to go. It leads to severe diplomatic isolation.
It's like the regime suddenly has leprosy. No one can touch them.
That's why Mohades uses that term, political corpse. He argues that with the IRGC listed, the regime loses all international political legitimacy. It effectively shackles their hands and feet legally. It opens the door for prosecuting individual commanders. If you're an IRGC commander, you can't travel, you can't move money, you are hunted.
He compares it to the collapse of the Assad system in Syria, but on a much larger scale. And that brings us to the elephant in the room, the JCPOA. The nuclear deal. Is it dead? Or is it just in a coma?
Oh, according to Mohades, we are planning the funeral. It's buried. You have to remember who manages the nuclear program, who manages the missile program.
The IRGC.
Exactly. So you cannot revive a nuclear deal when the entities sitting across the table, the guys actually holding the keys to the centrifuges, are designated terrorists. You can't sign a treaty with a terrorist group. It's legally and politically impossible.
So that half-open door that Europe tried to keep ajar for so many years.
Slammed shut, welded shut. Mohades notes that the U.S. now really only has one condition for the regime: surrender. There's no more negotiation on terms. And this raises the stakes significantly because when you close all the diplomatic channels, the risk of military confrontation doesn't go down. It skyrockets.
There's no off-ramp anymore.
None.
Let's shift gears and look at the ground level. We're in February 2026. The geopolitical ceiling is falling in, but the floor is also collapsing. We have to talk about the kitchen table issue, the economy inside Iran.
The numbers Mohades cites are just terrifying. The dollar has hit 150,000 tomans.
Let's just pause on that.
Yeah.
150,000 tomans. For context, just a few years ago, we were shocked when it hit 30,000 or 40,000. What does 150,000 actually mean for a normal family?
It means the complete evaporation of the middle class. It means if you are earning a salary in local currency, your money is essentially worthless before you even get it home. It means a father can't buy bread and medicine in the same week. It breaks the social contract entirely.
And this economic pressure is causing some really interesting shifts in alliances. Mohades talks about the Tehran Bazaar. Now, for listeners who might not be history buffs, why does the bazaar matter so much?
The bazaar is the heartbeat of Iranian politics. Historically, the merchant class, the bazaris, were the traditional allies of the clergy. They bankrolled the 1979 revolution. They are the conservative economic engine.
Right.
But Mohades points out that this hyperinflation has severed that alliance.
Because you can't run a business if you can't restock the shelves.
Precisely. If you sell a rug or a bag of rice today, by the time you go to buy more inventory tomorrow, the prices jump so much that you've actually lost money. The instability is terrible for business. So the bazaris are turning against the regime. When the merchants turn, the regime is in serious, serious trouble.
And amidst all this misery, how does this terrorist designation land with the average person on the street? Does it make them feel like the West is attacking their country?
Mohades argues the exact opposite. He says it provides a massive morale boost. For years, the Iranian people have been screaming, "The enemy is right here, it's not America." This listing validates their struggle. The message they hear is, the world finally understands who the problem is.
It's not the Iranian people, it's the IRGC.
Exactly. And on the flip side, imagine being a lower-ranking IRGC officer right now. That's where the cracks form. It creates doubt. If you're a mid-level officer, suddenly you aren't just a soldier for your government. You are an internationally recognized terrorist. Your future is gone. That psychological weight causes hesitation. And in a revolution, hesitation from the security forces. That is the moment the dam breaks.
Speaking of dams breaking, we need to talk strategy. Mohades is very clear that the old tactics don't work anymore. He says 1979-style protests, just massive crowds chanting, they aren't enough.
Why? Because the nature of the adversary has changed. He argues that the current regime is a military structure built specifically for suppression. He calls it a killing machine, and he drops a piece of intelligence that is honestly stomach-churning. He says the regime had prepared to kill 50,000 to 100,000 people to stop the recent uprising.
100,000 people. I mean, that's not crowd control. That's a war against your own population.
And it is. And when you are facing an entity willing to commit mass murder on that scale, peaceful chanting is just feeding people into a meat grinder. That's why Mohades proposes the role of resistance units.
Okay, so unpack this concept for us. What is a resistance unit? Are we talking about guerrilla warfare here?
Not exactly a full-scale civil war, but it's an evolution of tactics. Their job is to be the tip of the spear. They are organized, they are armed, and their goal is to push back the IRGC to break that initial line of suppression. If they can neutralize the club wielders and the gunmen, it creates a safe space for the general population to then flood the streets.
So it's not about a small group overthrowing the government by themselves. It's about a small group protecting the mass movement so the mass movement can overthrow the government.
That's the distinction. And the terrorist designation is vital here because, in Mohades' view, it legitimizes armed self-defense. If the police force is actually a terrorist organization, then resisting them with force isn't a crime, it's a defense of human rights.
Now we have to get into the most controversial part of this interview, and I want to be really clear here. We are reporting on the specific views and accusations made by Mr. Mohades in this source material. He spends a significant amount of time criticizing a specific figure in the opposition, Reza Pahlavi, the son of the former Shah.
Yes, and we do need to tread carefully because passions run very high on this, but Mohades is extremely critical of what he calls the Pahlavi current.
He really doesn't pull any punches. He accuses Pahlavi of serious inconsistency.
He does. He points out what he sees as constant flip-flopping. Mohades claims Pahlavi has oscillated between claiming the IRGC helps the people and should be embraced, to suddenly welcoming the terrorist listing when the political winds changed. To Mohades, this lack of a consistent analytical line shows a lack of independence and, frankly, leadership.
But then he goes further. He brings up data regarding Pahlavi's online support. He cites reports from Le Figaro and a cybersecurity group called Treadstone 71.
This is the bot army allegation. Mohades isn't just saying, oh, he's unpopular. He's citing these reports to claim that a huge chunk of Pahlavi's online engagement is manufactured. He mentions numbers like 4,700 fake accounts generating 800 million interactions. He calls them hallow armies.
Wait, 800 million interactions. That's industrial scale.
It is, and Mohades' argument is that this is all done to create confusion. He believes it's designed to distract from the real resistance on the ground. He essentially argues that these fake movements are actually helpful to the regime because they muddy the waters.
He also criticizes Pahlavi's reliance on foreign powers, right?
Yes. The critique is that Pahlavi is waiting for a white knight, waiting for foreign intervention or bombings to remove the regime, rather than organizing an independent domestic struggle. Mohades argues you just can't outsource your revolution.
And this leads to the alternative he's proposing for the Berlin rally. They have the slogan, no Shah, no Sheikh.
This is what they call the third option. The resistance argues that the Iranian people shouldn't have to choose between the current theocracy, the Sheikh, and a return to the monarchy, the Shah. They're pushing for a democratic republic. It's a rejection of one-man rule in any form.
And this touches on leadership style, too. Pahlavi is often seen as this individual figurehead. Mohades defends the National Council of Resistance of Iran, the NCRI. How is that different?
He draws a very sharp contrast between individual-centered leadership, which he thinks is outdated and dangerous, a cult of personality, and collective leadership. He explains that the NCRI operates like a parliament in exile. Even Maryam Rajavi, the president-elect of the NCRI, has a limited transitional role.
It's a 6-month interim presidency, isn't it?
That's the stated plan. Mohades emphasizes that in the 21st century, looking for a savior or a single strongman is just the wrong approach. He argues for a system where power is distributed, reflecting the diversity of Iran, Kurds, Baluchis, Persians, everyone having a seat at the table.
It's a very different vision of the future. One is about restoration of a past era, and the other is about a complete break from both the past and the present.
And that's why the Berlin rally is so significant to them. It's not just a protest against the regime, it's a line in the sand regarding what comes after. They want to demonstrate to the West that there is a viable, organized alternative that isn't a return to monarchy and isn't chaos.
So let's bring this all together. It's February 2026. The EU has finally sided with the protesters, labeling the IRGC as terrorists. The Iranian economy is destroyed with the dollar at 150,000 tomans. And the opposition is having this fierce existential debate about the soul of the future government.
It feels like a terminal phase for the regime. The safety valve of reform is gone. The diplomatic cover is stripped away. The economy is in free fall. Mohades believes the political corpse is just waiting to be buried, but the process of burying it, that is going to be messy and very dangerous.
And for you listening, whether you're in Berlin, New York, or Tehran, this matters because the stability of the entire Middle East hangs in the balance of what happens in Berlin and on the streets of Tehran in the coming weeks. If this regime collapses, the vacuum it leaves behind is massive.
Absolutely. We aren't looking at a static situation. This is a collapsing star. And usually when a star collapses, it pulls everything around it into the void.
So here's the final thought I want to leave you with, based on everything we've unpacked from this source. We always assume dictatorships fall slowly, then all at once. But if Mohades is right, and the safety valve is welded shut, and the world has closed the door on negotiation, are we witnessing the inevitable slide toward a violent armed revolution? And is the world actually ready for the chaos and the potential freedom that comes the day after the regime falls?
That is the question that should be keeping policymakers up at night.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll be watching Berlin closely. Stay tuned.